Coming up, a Hall of Fame songwriter tells us the story of working with simply one of the greatest artists in rock and roll history. His unforgettable voice has electrified everybody from Elvis to Bob Dylan. Now, he passed away in 1988, but in this upcoming mini documentary, we get some wonderful insight into his essence. Next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've ever stood in line forever at the merch booth at a concert to get that t-shirt, you're gonna dig this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below so that you never miss out on our daily content, the stories of the song straight from the artist. Also have a look at our Patreon to see more content there. That helps our mission of curating this music history. You know, we have a very special episode of Professor of Rock today. I'm excited about it. We have the story behind a song, but most of all, the story behind an amazing encounter with one of the legendary founding fathers of rock and roll, the great Roy Orbison. Roy has one of the greatest voices ever recorded. Just a couple of things to put it all in perspective. He was Elvis Presley's favorite singer. Bob Dylan felt the same way. Now, Bob Dylan related in his book Chronicles, which you have to read, it's amazing. I quote, "I was always fishing for something on the radio. Just like trains and bells, it was part of the soundtrack of my life. I moved the dial up and down, and Roy Orbison's voice came blasting out of the small speakers. His new song, Running Scared, exploded into the room. Running Scared. Orbison, though, transcended all the genres, folk, country, rock and roll, or just about anything. His stuff mixed all the styles and some that hadn't even been invented yet. He could sound mean and nasty on one line and then sing in a falsetto voice like Frankie Valli in the very next. With Roy, you didn't know if you were listening to a mariachi or opera. He kept you on your toes. With him, it was all about fat and blood. He sounded like he was singing from an Olympian mountaintop, and he meant business. One of his previous songs, Ooby Dooby, was deceptively simple. But Roy had progressed. He was now singing his compositions in 3 or 4 octaves that made you want to drive your car over a cliff. He sang like a professional criminal. Typically, he'd start out in some low, barely audible range, stay there a while, and then astonishingly slip into histrionics. His voice could jar a corpse, always leave you muttering to yourself something like, "Man, I don't believe it." His songs had songs within songs. They shifted from major to minor key without any logic. Orbison was deadly serious. No pollywog and no fledgling juvenile. There wasn't anything else on the radio like him. End of quote. Man, Bob Dylan nailed it. That's exactly how it is. Bob also related that when he was in the Traveling Wilburys with Roy and several other legends, including Beatle George Harrison, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne of ELO, that whenever Roy Orbison was recording his vocal parts, everybody, and I mean everybody, would stop everything they were doing and just watch in bewilderment at the beauty of his perfect voice. I'm so tired of being lonely. My dad taught me about Roy Orbison and his music when I was really young. He told me that he had the voice of an angel and that whenever one of Roy's songs came on, wherever you were at, you had to drop everything. You had to give your proper respects. And he was completely serious about it, I might add. And I've taken that advice from my dad and I've passed it down to my own kids. Remember a few months ago, I was driving with my wife and kids to a restaurant. We hadn't eaten all day. We were starving. Crying came on the radio. Alone and crying. And as we pulled into the parking lot, it barely started. And we all just sat in the car until the last note played. I told my kids, you are never going to hear a more beautiful voice than Roy Orbison. I mean, I've never been able to get through crying without doing just that. His voice just leaves you speechless. Crying over you. I had the opportunity to talk with Songwriters Hall of Fame inductee Billy Steinberg, who's co-written 5 #1 hits, including Like a Virgin by Madonna, So Emotional by Whitney Houston, I'll Stand By You for the Pretenders,
I'll stand by you.
Alone for Heart, True Colors by Cyndi Lauper, and Eternal Flame for the Bangles, and that's just to name a few. I love Billy Steinberg. He's such a great guy. He wrote a song with Roy Orbison in mind and was able to meet his hero. What follows is a story from Billy Steinberg about meeting his hero and actually working with Roy Orbison on the song that he wrote for him, and how the song became a big hit. It's such a joyous story. It's one of my favorites from all the interviews that I've done, all my experience of curating this project. It gives you a look into Roy Orbison, the man. Here is Billy Steinberg with the story.
I had to escape, the city was sticky and cruel.
Tell us a story, the Roy Orbison story.
I used to commute a lot between the Coachella Valley and Los Angeles. So I think the concept of the song, I Drove All Night, had something to do with that, driving back and forth. And I always loved the first line of that song. It has a little poetry to it. It says, I had to escape. The city was sticky and cruel. And I think a lot of people, when they hear it, they may not hear that, but I thought the city was sticky and cruel was kind of a nice way to start a song. So Tom and I wrote I Drove All Night, absolutely in our homage to Roy Orbison style. Like the pre-chorus in I Drove All Night, taste your sweet kisses, your arms open wide. That's a quotation from Running Scared by Roy Orbison. Very similar.
Very In Dreams.
Yeah. So we wrote I Drove All Night, and we made a demo of it with Tom singing. And we would laugh every time in the chorus when it would go, uh-huh, because Tom would sing it in his Roy Orbison impersonation, and we'd always just laugh. And at the time, I loved the band Cock Robin. And we knew Jay Landers. He at the time managed Cock Robin. And the lead singer and songwriter for Cock Robin was a guy called Peter Kingsbury. He was from Texas, like Roy Orbison. He had this big voice like Roy Orbison.
'Cause when your heart is free.
They were on Columbia Records. I thought, wow, let's get Cock Robin to do this song. So Tom and I got together with Peter Kingsbury and we played it for him, and he goes, great song, guys, but I write my own songs. Like he had no interest whatsoever covering a song. So that sort of went away. And then Tom and I went to a supper club in Orange County to hear Roy Orbison perform. It was one of those times in a legendary career where a guy was really off the map, unappreciated and forgotten. Roy didn't have a record deal, and he would play these sort of dinner clubs, and, you know, people who were teenagers during the 50s and early 60s would go to hear him. You know, we kind of braced ourselves, you know. The vocals on Roy Orbison records are insane.
Oh, yeah.
Elvis Presley used to say that Roy Orbison was his favorite singer. So Tom and I sort of thought, well, how's Roy gonna get up on stage and sing Crying and It's Over and In Dreams, and sing them with that same feeling? But a band came on stage and with background singers, and the girls started singing dum 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 dee doo dum 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 dee doo. And then Roy came out and sang every one of his hits, if possible, better than the record. It really...
He never lost it, even up to his death. I mean, he could still nail it every time.
He was insane.
And I knew where you
So after the concert, we went to a trailer. He had a little trailer outside in the parking lot of the restaurant. We said, you know, we were current hit songwriters and we love Roy, and we made arrangements for Roy to come over to Tom's house and put a vocal on the demo for I Drove All Night.
He come driving up in a...
red Ferrari. Yeah, he came driving up in a red Ferrari, and he came in the house, and he was so soft-spoken and so genteel, such a lovely guy. This was the first time I had ever worked with one of my childhood heroes.
Yeah.
And he told us the story of how he wrote Pretty Woman and the guitar riff for it.
Pretty woman, won't you pardon me?
Roy, your music means so much to me. I'm such a big fan. And he just said, in his soft-spoken Texas drawl, he just said, and I'm a big fan of yours too. And he said it so sincerely. So you had to love the guy. So, you know, he recorded some vocals on I Drove All Night, but what was it essentially? He was an unsigned artist, and this was a song that nobody at that point really wanted.
It was before his comeback.
Yeah. So anyway, Cyndi Lauper had a big hit with True Colors, and so that was a good introduction to her. And Tom and I were invited to go to New York to co-write with Cyndi. And we took with us I Drove All Night. And we played it for her, and she immediately said, oh, I'm going to cut that song. So we didn't even tell her that Roy had done a demo of the song, because it wasn't really meaningful. I mean, it was meaningful to us, but it wasn't meaningful on a career level because no one had ever heard Roy's version. So Cyndi cut it.
Went to number 6. It was a big hit here in America. And then Celine Dion, of course, covered it. It was on the Chrysler ads, and hers was number 1 in quite a few different countries, Belgium and Sweden and Canada, of course. Can't leave out Canada.
I like Celine's version. I think she did a great version of it.
That was one of your top 40 hits on the country charts. Pin Monkey covered it, 36 on the country charts. You probably knew that, but yeah.
Yeah, I knew it, but I don't think I heard it more than once.
Well, I read somewhere that John Waite did it too, but he never released his version. Tell us the story about Roy when it finally came out, because he had recorded it and he had his big comeback. And
boy, you really know all the you've been through the drawers here. Cyndi had a top 6 song with I Drove All Night. A couple years went by, and Roy Orbison, his career had a great resurgence, and he worked very well with Jeff Lynne from Electric Light Orchestra, and Roy was signed to Virgin Records. The Roy Orbison comeback with the song You Got It happened, and Roy joined up with the Superheroes and Traveling Wilburys. Everybody's got somebody to leave. And that happened, and tragically, Roy passed away. It occurred to me that his record company might be interested to hear Roy's version of I Drove All Night. I called a fellow named Jordan Harris, who was an A&R guy at Virgin Records, and I told him about it, and I sent it over to him, and he loved it. And he passed it along to Jeff Lynne, who took the 2 vocal takes that we did with Roy, and he reconstructed a track around it, and that's how we got the Roy Orbison record.
Well, that must have been just a magical experience when you spent that time and heard him singing your song.
You know, I told you a moment ago about how when Tom would sing the demo and he'd go, yeah, we would laugh because it just felt like, you know, doing a Roy Orbison impersonation. And then there we were in Tom's living room with headphones on, and it's Tom and me and Roy Orbison. And the track's in our ears, and we're hearing it, and Roy's singing along, and then Roy goes, yeah.
About you when the night is cold and dark, yeah.
And Tom and I looked at each other, and it was like lightning. It was like everything that you live for as a music lover and a songwriter was sort of encapsulated in that moment. That you write something completely as a tribute to your hero, and then there's your hero actually doing it. And it just was magic.
Now, Billy's co-writing partner on those hits was Tom Kelly. They're 2 of the most respected writers in the business, I can tell you. I've heard their names come up dozens of times in the interviews that I've done. Everyone just has a great respect for them, as do I. Leave us a comment about this great song and about the great Roy Orbison. What is your favorite Roy Orbison song and why? What are your memories of his music? If you like our content, we do invite you to be a full-time part of Professor of Rock by subscribing below. Check out our other options, Patreon. Help us keep the music alive. I can't tell you how important it is. It's very important. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.